Hello, this is Pranathi. I would like to talk about devaluation and inflation and how devaluation leads to inflation in current economy. Let's start about devaluation. Devaluation is a strategic economic policy where a country intentionally lowers the value of its own currency. Let, let us understand why a country ever try to devalue its own currency. Number one, in order to improve the trade balances. Number two, in order to improve nation's export competitiveness and also to reduce the debt burdens, a country would always try to devalue its currency. Generally, the value of any currency in any country is always dependent on the amount of goods and services produced in a country. So, a country makes its goods and services cheaper whenever it does devaluation. This can further lead to an increase in inflation because the imports are becoming more expensive, making domestic consumers less likely to purchase. Let's talk about the boosting exports and reducing debts, which are the impacts of devaluation. As exports volume increase, it stimulates economic growth and it also creates employment opportunities and it in turn contributes in faster GDP growth as we have seen in the output in macroeconomics. Additionally, pricey imports encourage consumers to choose local alternatives, further improving the terms of trade. Reducing debt. When a country's currency is devalued, the value of its debt denominates in the currency decreases. This can make it easier for the government to manage its debt obligations. Let's start about inflation. Inflation is the rise in prices, which can be translated as the decline of purchasing power over a period of time. The rate at which purchasing power drops can be reflected in the average price increase of a consumer basket, which is the basket of consumer goods and services for every period of time. The important reasons of inflation is the increase in supply of money. Though this can play an differential mechanism in the economy, a country's money supply can be increased by the monetary authorities by three major methods. One, printing and giving away money to citizens. Number two, legally devaluing. That's what we are going to talk about. Number three, loaning new money into existence as reserve accounts credits through the banking system by purchasing government bonds from banks on the secondary market. How devaluation leads to inflation. If there is a devaluation, then there will be an increase in the price of imported goods. Imports are quite a significant part of a consumer price index. Therefore, they will contribute towards the cost push inflation. Exports become more competitive, that is cheaper for the foreign buyers without firms having to make much effort. Therefore, there is less incentive for them to cut costs, and therefore, in the long run, costs will increase and therefore inflation will increase. However, this may not occur if firms are well run and they keep incentives to cut costs. This is the graph in 2008 explained, which 25% fall in the value of sterling created inflation about 2% in the UK economy. The effects of devaluation. Imports being expensive leads to lower quantity of imports and thus higher inflation. And also exports being cheaper also increases the quantity of exports and leads to the aggregate demand rises, further increases the inflation. So for any economy, it is important it has to control its own inflation. The major ways through which it can control is through monetary policy, long term inflation rate fixing, relatively constant level of inflation. Just as we know, inflation and devaluation are one of the economic drivers in any economy. Keeping them in balance is one of the most important factors to have a steady growth. Thank you.